Hello, I am Becky Kush. I'm Elligo's Chief Scientific Officer and the founder and President Emeritus of CDISC. And I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is directly related to supporting a learning health system through which we can leverage data from healthcare to accelerate the way we do research and inform clinical decisions for patients. And we are all patients. Quoting our acting FDA commissioner, Dr. Janet Woodcock, we have to move clinical research out into the community, and we have to support that if we are going to be successful in enrolling populations who reflect this country. Dr. Woodcock has authored papers and espoused this concept for many years, and for a number of reasons. One key goal is to increase the number of resources, i.e. patients and physicians, for participation in clinical research. We all know that the percentage of patients participating in research today is very low, and a low percent of the eligible population. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought decentralized clinical trials into clearer focus. This quote from November 2020 is extremely optimistic about DCTs. Decentralized and virtual trials offer compelling alternatives to clinic-based trials. Under the right conditions, they could rapidly supplant traditional in-person approaches and dramatically enhance the scale, data collection, geographic range, cost effectiveness, and speed of clinical trials. The FDA has issued guidance that supports virtual visits during and potentially beyond the pandemic. And in fact, the FDA was promoting decentralized clinical trials well in advance of the pandemic. So in terms of accelerating clinical trials and using DCTs, the means are very broad and widespread. But a few that readily come to my mind are related to this topic are shown on this slide today. Having spent decades in the world of standards, I'm well aware that using standards from the start can allow study startup 70 to 90% faster. We've also managed to lock databases within hours of last patient out. And if we have rapid access to data for the data management and analyses, we can do this in hours. Timely enrollment and high retention of patients, however, is proving to be elusive for many trial protocols, and it's critical. And this is the area that I want to address first. So most patients are never approached about a clinical trial, and their physicians are not engaged in research. And this is why Dr. Woodcock has been recommending that we should take trials out into the community. This can help address problems with diversity, as well as the number of patients who contribute their data to research. And at this point, healthcare data and clinical research largely remain separate, even though there are clear opportunities that arise when we bridge the divide between them. The pandemic has increased awareness of the importance of clinical research, and I hope that we can take advantage of this. So how can we address the challenges of patient enrollment to accelerate research? This slide depicts the clinical trial process and the portion of the timeline that's devoted to patient enrollment in a clinical trial. However, typically in a traditional enrollment process, we all know that sites become ready to enroll patients at different points in time, and they also enroll at different rates. This extends the overall enrollment process significantly. In contrast, if we have a community-based approach, ideally we could identify the patients in advance. While the trial master files are being checked, the site personnel are being trained, the database is being developed, we can enroll all the patients then in a compressed time. And the sites who have such patients can prepare well ahead of first patient in and start doing the outreach to those patients during the prep time. The potential for accessing patients through professional research sites can be compared here to the potential for accessing patients through healthcare data. This slide shows the relative sizes of these populations, and this type of access to patients through healthcare, however, is not without its issues, but the opportunity remains immense, so it's worth exploring, and we're going to talk about it in the next few slides. Expanding the resource pool beyond academic institutions and full-fledged instantiated sites into community practices and healthcare brings a wealth of opportunities to increase patient resources and physician participation. Access to these community EHRs can provide an abundance of healthcare data. Patient identification can be done in advance, as we discussed earlier. If patients do not exist and you can't find such patients that are to meet the protocol inclusion-exclusion requirements, protocol amendments can be done before the trial starts. And the wealth of community patients can also help increase diversity as it reflects the population at large more. When working with community practices, one key concern with respect to patients is that they will likely want to stay with their trusted physician. And this takes some finesse. First, the physician should learn about research well in advance so that because this is a new area for them, and they'll want to understand the opportunity and what will it mean for them to participate in clinical research. And earning the physician's trust is important so that then they can do the outreach to their patients. Certain decentralized trials can be done with a direct patient approach, but there are many types of trials that will require that a physician be involved. Partnering with the physician will mean that identifying what type of support they need in order to do research, and they may need different types of support, which we'll talk about in a minute. And in addition, ongoing communication with the physician and the patient during the trial will reinforce that relationship and help with retention and compliance. With respect to support for physicians who are not investigators, this could potentially include help with identifying the patients, as we discussed earlier, GCP training, central collection and retention of master files for them, study management assistance, and possibly even a central physician who would be the PI. That would mean that this physician could end up being a sub-I to another PI in order to make sure that they get the support they need. Leveraging the abundance of EHR data can also be challenging, but once again, the opportunities are typically greater than the challenges. Techniques that can be useful are shown on this slide. First, aggregating the EHR data into a data repository with a data standard format, which does require an initial mapping, but once you've done that mapping, then the data can be easier for data science to analyze and to provide support for identifying potential patients. With such a data repository, you can also start creating patient registries so that certain patients with certain diagnoses can be available when the study arises and the patients can be contacted quickly. Once the patients are identified, the physician can be notified that there are eligible patients in their practices and they can start doing the outreach. And again, it also helps ensure diversity. The trusted relationship between the physician and patient should be protected regardless. So I don't really have time to go into the detail in the area of technology today, but I don't want to forget to mention it. Technology is very important in terms of making decentralized clinical trials and hybrid trials successful, particularly with respect to how the EHR data are connected to the research data. This requires adherence to relevant regulations and to guidance documents. And this slide shows some of the key issues that come to the fore. First, it's important to preserve the patient privacy and data security, and having the physician or study manager at the site do the outreach to the patient can help maintain this. Communication is also very important, and this helps with retaining patients. And this type of technology can be very innovative, even leveraging artificial intelligence and different remote bots and sort of thing. Implementing standards to facilitate the flow of data from e-source to submission is important, especially because it prevents having to re-enter data. So electronic data exchange to eliminate transcription has been shown to reduce time and resource requirements and to increase the quality of the data. And last but not least, collecting true eSource. This is what I call true eSource, is the data that's entered by the site personnel or study managers who are working for the site. And this is a nuance, but it's important to have that true eSource rather than having eSource tools that are linked to EDC and controlled by CROs or vendors, which have a number of other regulations they must meet. In summary, decentralized and hybrid trials are here to stay. A model that leverages the community and healthcare data has the potential to vastly increase the number of patients and physicians who could participate in clinical research. Retaining the patient-physician dyad and adding support as needed can make it more palatable for patients and their physicians to participate in research. Rapid access to extremely large repositories of healthcare data from engaged physicians can enable identification of the population at the start of the study, thus accelerating enrollment. Technology and standards can streamline the data flow and improve data quality and compliance. And last but not least, bridging research and healthcare through data will benefit all of us as patients. Thank you very much for listening to me give this presentation. I'm available for questions if you have any. If you want to reach out after the show, here's my email for you. Thank you.